saying it can't.
All right, we're going to hit the commercials here. We got time.
Because I live in Detroit, I was able to get tuition-free college through the Detroit Promise. I feel very fortunate working with the Detroit Promise. They were able to afford me so many opportunities. I'm currently studying media production and journalism at University of Michigan Dearborn. I'm looking to take my talents further into the production industry, short films. I love working with people here, and this is where I want to be. And that's why I'm Detroit for life.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, broadcasting to you from the lovely confines of Bradford, UK, up in the north of England, and 5 hours ahead, but more on that later with some of the topics. We are joined, of course, with a very esteemed collection of people who will comment on several things that have happened this week, including our attorneys, Bill Seikaly, Steve Fishman, and Joel Sklar, pollster Ed Sarpolus, president of BME Consulting and former director of the Wayne County Public Services Department, Beverly Watts, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel.
Hello.
So for those of you who thought that a 9 p.m. start was going to be a bit rough, try watching it at 2 a.m. in the UK. The debate yesterday between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and I believe we have video, Alan.
Biden has to not look old and not have a senior moment. Go.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
Thing was rocking good, but the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants. We had the lowest taxes ever. I didn't have sex with a porn star.
Anderson, this was a game-changing debate in the sense that right now, as we speak, there is a deep, a wide, and a very aggressive panic in the Democratic Party. It started minutes into the debate, and it continues right now.
That was painful. I love Joe Biden. I work for Joe Biden. He didn't do well at all. He did not do well at all. And he looked, I'll give you the analysis. You kind of have the old man versus the con man. I can walk you through how I'm supposed to see it and say it, but I just want to speak from my heart. I love that guy.
And don't forget, they blew up the Chicken Man in Philly last night, according to Bruce Springsteen. Oh, Ann Farnell saying that her mother was born and raised in Bradford. Way to go, Ann. So on this side of the Atlantic, just to show you how bad it was, here there is an election next week. And Labor and conservatives actually took out the soccer ball, got out of their trenches on Christmas Day, and kicked it around like it was World War I again, because it was a moment of détente, thinking that their shit show was certainly milder than our shit show. What is going on? What are we to make of this? Ed, let's start with you. How is this looking from a pollster side?
Well, this reminds me of Gil Hill back when he fumbled on WXY TV in the debate with Kwame Kilpatrick. And so we have a repeat of what we saw during that time. What's going on right now is that the calls are going, the phone started, like everybody says, during the debate. They have to decide what they want to do quickly. And they're deciding, I think the problem is going to be is you're going to have to get the people to spend the money to come in, because the rank and file people are just going to wring their hands until they get direction out of the top brass. Even Governor Newsom today was too mild, I think. He needed to state more firm decisions. But the bottom line, they will decide probably by this weekend what they're going to do. Because remember, they have to have, and what's helping Biden is the fact that they won't have to make this decision at the convention, because they have to vote before the convention, because they got to make sure that they're on the ballot in Ohio.
So Ed, I mean, from how you're sounding is that something is going to be done. That are we now past that point of saying that the status quo is going to hold and that Biden is going to go forward?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I've been in politics for 52 years. This does not mean Biden will not still be on the ballot. You got to remember, whoever holds the purse strings and wants to spend money will decide what happens with Biden. I don't think we're there yet. It'll happen over the weekend, though.
Okay. Beverly, what did you think of the debate?
Well, I have to have full disclosure. I was at an awards event at the casino last night. And so while trying to rush home to see the debates, I fell into the dollar slot machine. Which I was going to stay there for 10 minutes. It turned into 2 hours. So by the time I got home, the debate was over. However, I was on the phone like you till about 1 a.m. talking to friends and listening to the comments after the fact. So it kind of summed up what occurred. However, I can say I don't care if he stood there and stayed silent for the 2 hours. It did not and will not change my vote. And a lot of my colleagues said the same as we were texting. Because it's not about Biden. It's not about Biden. It should be, but it's not. It's about the other guy.
So did you make enough from the dollar slots that you don't really have to worry about who won? You're going to be okay either way?
I made $20.
That's
$5 short of paying for the valet. The valet is $25 there.
I was just going to say that's enough to pay the toll on the tunnel to get through and make your escape and to ask for political asylum. So there you go.
Well, Beverly, you qualify for free drinks, though, I hope.
Yeah. Okay. Allan.
I want to say, as a friend I was talking to was saying, it was like the big build up for the Lions game like last year with the Ravens, see if we're like the real deal. And everyone's expecting, well, hey, Joe Biden, he might kick some ass like he did in the State of the Union. And then he got his ass kicked, and we're like, well, maybe the Lions aren't as good as we thought. I think, it's interesting when the special counsel report came out that he was feeble-minded, and he got so angry, and he had a press conference that night and came off as feeble-minded. People thought that was it. And then he had the amazing State of the Union address where people were like, wow, he's Joe. And then he was back to kind of feeble-minded last night.
Right. And to be honest, a lot of individuals I spoke to all week long leading up to the debate, to my surprise, a lot of them said they were not going to watch because they believe in the president. They're still going to stick by the president, but they're also a little gun shy, hoping he didn't have a freeze thaw or, stumble. Everybody knows he had a stutter. But again, we didn't know he was probably battling a cold or something like that. But to my surprise, a lot of people were kind of fearful of watching, and they were just hoping for no fumble. But they said they are 10 toes down behind him because, again, it's about the other guy. And even though he was I understand, more energetic, he still told a lot of lies. He just untruths, and they should do fact checking. So I don't think that it changed supporters if you were on one side or the other. It didn't seem to be that way. It just was a little sad hearing from others that they thought, just like Allan was saying, when you hear the State of the Union, they want to see that same kind of robust.
Well, I mean, and that's what Allan, one of our viewers, had said. Shame on CNN for not fact checking in real time or after. Steve seems to be shaking his finger at this.
So my wife and I were watching in different rooms. They introduced them. They both stood up. I came out of the bedroom out to the den and said, can you believe, looking at those two guys, if you saw two guys come to your house to do anything for you and they looked like those two, you'd say, are you kidding me? 340 million people in this country. These are the two guys we're going to pick. That's how we started. I went back. She stayed here in the den. 15 minutes into it, after his mumbling, I couldn't stand it anymore. It was making me physically ill. Beverly, if you didn't see it, it's impossible for you to understand how bad it was. Yeah. And I turned off the television set. I walked out here about 5 minutes later, and I said, so, and she was watching a movie. And she did the exact same thing because she felt the exact same way. And the point is, the State of the Union is one thing.
Right.
That's giving a speech. All you're doing is reading off of a teleprompter. This debate, can you imagine if it would have been Pete Buttigieg or Gretchen Whitmer or Jared Polis on the other side of all those lies? All that stuff about fact checking, that's complete bullshit. The other guy's supposed to check the facts. And all he had to do was respond to the idiotic things that Trump was saying,
right,
and then just talk. So I have only one more comment, and I'm interested in what all you political people, particularly Beverly and Ed, say about this. This business with preparing for debates, this preparation stuff, he looked like in the 15 minutes that I watched, people had crammed all these things into his head, and that's what he was supposed to say.
Right.
And he didn't.
Right.
And he didn't listen, which is the danger that we all see. Bill and Joel know about lawyers, that they're not listening to what's going on. They have a prepared thing they want to say, and jurors scratch their head and say, what does that have to do with what just came out in court? So those were my observations.
Steve, before you came on, I said he was over-prepared. As a matter of fact, I would not have prepared him at all. All he had to do was to talk and just saying, that's a lie. Let me tell you what the truth is and go on. Because I had John Conyers as a client. I told John, ignore what you're asked for. Know what talk about you like to talk about. And I picked the time of day he did talk, but in the morning, John was great. But I never told him, ignore the debate when they're challenging you, because just speak what you know about. Because John was the same thing. But once he was in his game, nobody could shut him down.
Exactly. I totally agree. I totally agree. Especially coming from a debater. I've been one since the 5th grade. But you have a knack. You have to go with, and you can't have this prepared. You can't have this rehearsal. I never do rehearsals because then I'll get jarred up. You just got to go with and speak with what you know. You know, if you've created all that, no rehearsals.
One other thing, in the short time I watched, the question of abortion came up, and Trump said something insane, like everybody agrees it should be left to the states. And then they turned to Biden, and of course he had all these things crammed in his head. All he had to say was, really? Does everybody include the 53 or 54% of the people who are female in this country? Are you kidding? And that's how he should have said, just like that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my observation.
My point is, Biden was fatally exposed. I mean, this is just, I think it's fatal. I think you cannot possibly be responsible and run at 82 the way he appears and the way that he sounds. The thing that's going to happen, I hope to God there's a new candidate. Democrats like us are going to vote Democratic no matter what.
Right.
But to expand that field a little bit and to get people to say, oh my God, I can't put this fucking old man. She's senile. I can't do that.
Right.
Find somebody else. Anybody else. Whitmer. Here's Josh Shapiro. I like Josh Shapiro. I like Whitmer. Get somebody who's young, because two old men have no fucking business running for president. And that younger Democrat is going to win because they're young, they're vigorous, and people will have a little bit more excitement than the dread they have now. That's all. That's what I
Bill.
Yeah, I was torn last night. I watched every minute of it. It was painful. I think I would have preferred having my teeth drilled without Novocaine. I was waiting. I mean, I was screaming at the TV, actually saying, Joe, tell him he's fear mongering. Joe, tell him. I mean, there are a million lines he could have used. I mean, I thought Trump was an embarrassment. I think Trump is still an existential threat to democracy and freedom in this country, and I'd support Allan Lengel over Donald Trump.
Well, let's not get carried away.
Isn't that an embarrassment? Seeing that president, isn't that an embarrassment? This man is not vigorous. He does not appear to have all his marbles. He can barely speak. He can't articulate. He can't inspire. That's
no, Joel. I don't disagree with you. My wife said something that I thought was very important. She said, if after this, Joe can't put his ego aside and step down, then fundamentally he may be as bad as Trump. Now, as I said, I'd vote for Allan over Trump. So I'm going to, and you are.
The bar's low, you're saying.
Then I'm going to bet for porn stars, Allan. And I'm going
but I say that, I say this is the importance of it to me. While I would never vote for Trump, I think that my vote and the vote of the people on this panel, we're probably all going to vote for Biden if that's the choice. Isn't the issue. The issue is that 5, maybe 6, I don't know, Ed could tell me the percentage better than I know, of the people who aren't decided who are going to make a decision. And if they don't show up, or if a bunch of Democrats don't show up because they just couldn't vote for Biden, it could bring it down. I thought what Van Johnson said in that clip, and I think it got lost because the clip was so long, was very important. In many ways, Joe Biden's a hero to me because he got Trump out of office. And I will always love Joe Biden for making sure that happened. If he stays in this race, I fear that the opposite will be true. And I don't want that to be Joe's legacy. Joe Biden's contributed to this country in many great ways. He needs to contribute in probably the most difficult way that he would ever imagine. He needs to be able to put his big boy pants on and say, I realized what happened, and I cannot let this country ever get back into the hands of Donald Trump. We must put up a different candidate. Now, there are all kinds of problems with that. They're almost too numerous to mention. But the real question in my mind is, will there be the leadership in the party, in the Democratic Party, that doesn't exist in the Republican Party? What should have happened in the Republican Party is when Trump got out of hand, the leadership should have gone to him and said, you've got to stop doing this or you're going to lose our support. Somebody needs to go, important people need to go to Joe and say, Joe, we love you. You've done great things. You cannot allow a loss to Trump, your legacy. You need to step down.
Who would you like to see? Who would you like to see in the?
Well, I definitely would like. You mean have the conversation with him, or like to see as the next candidate?
The next candidate.
I think, yeah. Oh, the next candidate,
or replace.
The bench is deep. I don't think that the selection of the next candidate's necessarily the issue, though we can talk about that. I think what's important is who is the leadership in the Democratic Party who can go to Joe Biden. I think it has to include Jill Biden.
Yes.
I think it's absolutely essential.
It's 1968, guys. Okay. Bobby Kennedy has just been shot to death, and we're headed into a convention with, an idiot leadership that led us to this. These nerds in the Democratic Party who are like trying to balance voting blocks. Oh, we're going to move the black bloc over here. Oh, we can't lose Kamala because then we'll lose all the black votes. Blah 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 blah. And they're going to dither and bullshit, and they're going to be young people in the streets, and they're going to be howling about Gaza and about, inflation and a million other things that are on their minds, the price of housing, for God's sake. It's going to be a replay of 1968. You're absolutely right. I mean, Biden.
Well, I want to hear Nancy say that one more time. I'm sorry, Nancy said.
Biden lost Tom Friedman overnight. I mean, when you lose a mushy moderate like Tom Friedman, it's time for you to get out. And it's true. It's hard. It's going to be difficult for him to do, but it's something that he has to do. And this may be the last possible fucking moment that we can maybe pull it off with another candidate. And I'm thinking,
I want to say this, and maybe I'm too optimistic, though. I've never been accused of being an optimist, and you can't be when you practice law. But I happen to believe that both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris love this country enough to know that if either of them are at the head of this ticket, it could spell a disaster. And that it's time for them to do not what's right for them.
I mean, you're just stating the obvious here. This is absolutely true. I mean, this is you're absolutely right.
Well, but the question is, do they love the country enough to do it? I'll tell you, you get into an election and nobody wants to see the writing on the wall.
Love this.
Well, I think the first thing you got to understand, what I did not hear in the last night and tonight, nobody's talking about Kamala Harris moving up the ticket.
No. Everybody agrees.
I can tell you why, because I was doing polling for the Black community during the presidential race one first time. The Black community, she has a problem with black males. It ain't going to work. But she has to be kept on a ticket if there's going to be a compromise. Actually, she could be the one to coordinate this very quickly because of where her position is as vice president. Okay. But the bottom line is that Kamala Harris, I don't hear anybody, even anybody in the largely Black community, other than one of our commentators, pushing her. So yes, it's going to be either a complete new team or possibly Kamala could stay on if she helps have Biden move on and find somebody stronger. And I'm going to tell you this, I'm not being sexist here, but I think it almost has to be a woman if it's Kamala, but you're going to have to find a strong male population to take on Trump and his ego.
Well, and that's the other thing. Can I just say one more thing, and I'll
Sure.
let you guys go back to talking like you're in an Aaron Sorkin show. We have to make it about Trump. It's like we talk about policy, okay, and that's always been that's the one thing that we have over. That's one thing, not the one thing that we have over Trump in this election. But if somebody doesn't get up and say in the loudest possible voice of a person that is under 82 years old, this man is a liar. This man is a Russian plant, probable Russian plant. This man wants to dismantle NATO, which will lead to World War III. I mean, and he's a fucking piece of shit. And say it in those words. He's a fucking piece of shit. And say it on national television. And don't worry that you don't look presidential.
I'm not sure I would have said he's a fucking piece of shit on national television in a debate. But I agree with Nancy. I mean, I threw my glasses at the TV and was screaming, say he's a fearmonger. Because that's what Trump did yesterday. I could not believe the level of fear mongering this guy was involved in. Plus, he's anti-American. I mean, we're a third world nation
and pro-Trump. Yeah,
nobody respects us. I mean, Biden was right. What president or presidential candidate speaks like that? Who disrespects America and the system so much? And by the way, he still hasn't said he will accept whatever the results are. If I deem it a fair and free election, then I'll accept it. Well, everybody knows that code. It means if I win, I'll accept it. If anybody else wins, I'm going to scream it's unfair.
So there's a Supreme Court. Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead, Joel. Sorry.
Oh, my only point, and I think this mirrors Nancy's, I think if the message is coming from Biden, it's not going to be heard. You can't understand it. He can't give it. He can't articulate it. You need someone else to give it, not a surrogate, but a fucking candidate. You need somebody who's going to run, going to be a president who can do all the things we expect a president to do, to be able to speak, to be able to inspire, to be able to articulate, to be able to take openings that an opponent gives you and run a fucking truck through them. Any lawyer would do. If Trump said the shit he said, he could be picked apart so quickly. And just the constant repetition is you're a liar. You're a liar. You're a liar. That's all you got to do. But you need somebody to give a message. It ain't going to be Biden. There's got to be a change or we are doomed.
I want to read real quick. Brett Stevens in the New York Times said, early in the debate, Biden stumbled over his words and lost the train of thought after a question about the national debt. He lost the debate then and there. His very presence on the stage felt like a form of elder abuse.
It did.
Wow.
It was unwatchable. It was painful.
Allan, I felt as though it was like Muhammad Ali fighting Larry Holmes. I mean, it was just the twilight of something. And by the way, Bill, who also wouldn't say that on TV, Aaron Sorkin. So
a thrilling Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah. So,
you know what? I'm glad. Right. But I'm glad I didn't see it hearing this, because I do, I have always been a great fan of Biden even before he was our president, just because of all the things and what he's given his life to for civil servants. And then I happened to have been in Tennessee, last weekend, just getting back, and I would happen to have an opportunity to visit the Civil Rights Museum. And that really brought the forefront for me the first time to go to that museum and see, where we've come from as a minority in this country, and then to look and see who we have as running for president of these great United States. It really was sad, to look at that history and then to look at a candidate and not, I don't do personal attacks on everyone, especially Trump, but to look at a person like that who's even allowed to be a candidate for the United States of America is just disgusting.
How many of you wanted to hear somebody say last night, how can you talk about law and order? How in the world can this convicted felon who has all these charges pending against him be the guy who's going to support law and order?
Because law and order to him is only crime that is done by brown people, in a drugstore. Like, oh, look, they're looting the CVS, so
it's
he doesn't think what he does is crime.
Though. If Biden can't pick apart Trump as easily as he can be picked apart, it reflects his cognitive functioning.
Yeah,
I mean, Trump is not a hard guy to pick apart. He's got a million sins, a million flaws. And if you can't do that, you have no business running for office. You have no business having that responsibility. It's a cognitive decline that is painfully apparent. And we're all saying the things that he could have said that were easy to say that he didn't say that confirm the cognitive decline.
Does he remember?
Joel, maybe it was the cold medicine. Maybe.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was over memorization of his life.
The NyQuil, he didn't take the daytime, but the nighttime. That's awesome. I made that mistake.
Took the NyQuil instead of the DayQuil.
I'd like to make one last comment, and I want to go back to Kamala Harris, who I have a lot of respect for, by the way. I think she's a good and decent person. I just don't think that she's the right person for this job at this particular time, for a whole bunch of reasons that I'm not proud of that exist in this country. But I think what you're going to see right now is an uptick in the advertising that a vote for Joe Biden is really a vote for Kamala Harris. And I think that speaks volumes about where we're going to go. Now we know why you buy a Supreme Court justice. Thank you, Bart. I do think, Saeed, that this has been a painful section of our show, probably the most painful that I've been through. Why don't you move us on to some other topic?
Well, if you'll permit, then I will, of course, comply. One thing, though, I do want to say, Bill, is you saying, and I would vote for Allan too over Trump. But do we really want to
get it going?
Yeah, but do we really want to risk the Arab vote for the Dems there, Bill? I mean, because it's
hey, I'm one of those Arab votes, and I said I'd vote for him over Trump.
I know.
Now, I wouldn't vote for him over most candidates.
But it's such a lock this year, right? I mean, how do we want to jeopardize that, Bill? I mean, well, somebody mentioned the Supreme Court, and first of all, I mean, for the first time that I can remember in recent memory, the court's term, although it ended, usually traditionally ends at the end of June, it hasn't really ended, and it looks like some of the major cases are still pending to be read from the bench, and it's going to bleed into next week, even though July 4th, the holiday's there. But there were two cases that came down today that I thought were interesting. One of them, which may actually have a lot of bearing for Donald Trump, and that's Fisher versus U.S., a 6-3 decision where a former police officer in the January 6th insurrection, it appears as though the court has held that the statute that was used, the so-called Enron statute, was improperly used. The other Supreme Court case was Relentless Incorporated versus Department of Commerce and Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, which seems to have overturned the 40-year-old Chevron case by a 6-3 majority, which allowed greater ease for federal agencies to regulate the environment, consumer protection, public health, and workplace protections as well. So that one, I'm sure, is probably not going to get as much fanfare because it doesn't involve the Bill of Rights. But it seems as though that's a major setback for those particular areas. But what about the January 6th case?
Bill, did you read that? Because
I just read the blog. I mean, it just came out this morning. And I have not read the opinion because it literally just came out. It wasn't out half an hour ago. 45 minutes ago. But
okay, well, we'll give it to you.
I think it's a dangerous opinion. I think this whole group of opinions, the two cases, and I would add one other, and that's the case involving the drugs, the opioid case in which they struck down the bankruptcy court's opinion and the $88 billion potential settlement. I think that this demonstrates a couple of things. One, how very conservative the court is. It's taking away the ability of the government to define and use administrative tools to control overreach by corporations. It takes away the attorney's ability in mass tort cases to do what we do to regulate conduct. And it also limits the prosecutor's ability to go after the people who engaged in this insurrection. And just based on what I know was the issue presented, to be candid, I'm outraged. The idea that you have to show that they actually interfered with an official proceeding, and that didn't happen in this case. I mean, I think you've got to really stretch to get there.
Well, the other one that bothers me is the gratuity case. Well, as long as I give you the $13 million after you pass the bill, it's okay.
Another great example, right? Another great example. That was a case in which the question was bribery of an official, and the court decided because the money was paid after the vote and not before the vote, that's okay. Think about that one, folks.
I'll do that every day of my life. Yeah,
it's like Jared Kushner getting the $2 billion after he left the White House.
Right. Well, forget after the White House, after the vote. I mean, people have been convicted of bribery. If they would have had that roadmap, Kwame would still be in office. I mean, give me a break. This is ridiculous. It ignores reality.
I agree.
Well, what about let's take a break. Let's take a break. That way Bill has the time to read the case.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
What's on your mind?
What are the issues facing you and your families today?
Before we ask for your vote, Alyssa Slotkin wants to hear about your concerns.
Democrat Alyssa Slotkin is running for U.S. Senate, and she wants to have a real conversation about your issues.
Is it support for our small businesses, funding for our schools, good-paying jobs, or opportunities for our youth?
Alyssa is already building a campaign around listening.
It's how she shapes her agenda in Congress.
And why Alyssa's already been endorsed by small business owners, pastors, and leaders from our community.
We know too many campaigns come to us right before the election and ask for our vote.
That's not Alyssa. She has a reputation for listening and delivering.
And this is your chance to help shape the agenda in Washington.
Make your voice heard. Go to alyssaslotkin.org/community.
Because in this campaign, your ideas come first.
I'm Alyssa Slotkin, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Slotkin for Michigan.
Go Alyssa.
All right, go Alyssa. Yes, thank you for that. Yes, Steve. Sorry.
First thing, if I'm not mistaken, Ed, and this is all the more shocking, that mayor that took the money, I think you misspoke. You said $13 million. It was only $13,000. That's how cheap that guy was. I did take a look at that opinion. I think what you're seeing with respect to those kinds of opinions, it's the same thing that happened with the governor of Virginia. I think that this group of Supreme Court justices, because a couple of them love to take money and for things that they're going to do, I think that they're pretty much starting to eliminate 18 U.S.C. 666. There's not going to be any such thing as bribery. If they don't think that the people doing the bribing and the people who are taking the bribes didn't read that opinion, where the 13,000, of course, they'll just wait till afterward. They'll get all their money then, and therefore it's not a crime. To me, though, the most significant case this week was them reversing their granting of cert on the Idaho abortion situation. Because I think we can tell you, the three of us lawyers from our law firm over there down the street from Nance, I think we can tell you that in my lifetime, I don't know that I've ever remembered that ever happening before. And if you think about it, the analysis is it's totally political. When they granted it, they did it because that's what they wanted to do, which is to make sure that the Idaho statute eventually is okay. Then all of a sudden they realize, because they're completely political, they're not justices anymore. They say, wait a minute, this is hurting the Republicans. This is going to hurt us, this kind of stuff. 54 women had to flee Idaho. The closest place where they could go to get this kind of treatment was 8 hours away by car, Portland or Seattle. They realize this stuff is going out there. So all of a sudden they get together and they say, okay, our bad. We didn't really mean to grant cert. Now, you guys know as well as I do, if Trump wins this election, the Republicans take over, that one of the first things they're going to do, they're going to re-grant the cert, and then they're going to say that the statute's fine. And they're going to leave all these women, again, in the same position that they were in when during that 7-month period. That, to me, of all the things they've done, the political nature of that, it's unbelievable to me that they would be that obvious. And maybe they think that the rest of us are that stupid that we wouldn't recognize the politics about it. And maybe they're right, because how many people are paying attention to that? But it sure got my attention.
Well, that's why I thought about the $13,000 was as a gift to Supreme Court Justice Thomas and Alito, because now they can take all that money because it happened after their opinion.
Correct. That it's so self-serving. But who authored the opinion? Do we know? Was it a Thomas opinion?
I will look. I'll look that up next. But I do want to tell you that in the Fisher case, because Saeed suggested I read the opinion, I couldn't read it that quickly, but I did pull it up, and the politics here are fascinating to me. And this is a little bit in the weeds, but Roberts wrote the opinion. It was signed on by Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, and Jackson. Jackson wrote a concurring opinion, but Barrett joined in the dissent with Sotomayor and Kagan. Wow. These are alliances that are shifting. These are unusual combination of judges. I think it'll be very interesting. The opinion I'm waiting for the most is the immunity opinion. I've still got my fingers crossed that the court has a little bit of integrity. I think it's going to be a 8-1 opinion against Trump. I think Thomas is too big of a whore to not side with Trump, but it's just
you don't think 7-2 with Thomas and Alito?
I don't think even Alito could sign onto that. Though, you know what?
Yeah,
I do. You got to remember the good side of the possibility they could grant this. Biden, if they granted total immunity, Biden could have Trump killed. It's the ridiculousness of
their analysis. You're right. It's that they have to use.
So I got to ask a question of this group. That did anybody have in the week that was bingo card Amy Coney Barrett as swing vote?
I saw that. I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, is she going to be the new Anthony Kennedy? Who knows? Well, a little bit closer to home.
How scary that is.
A little bit closer to home, we've got the Michigan Court of Appeals, which has been asked by ex-GOP Chair Kristina Karamo if they would overturn her ouster as, in fact, Michigan GOP chair. Anyone want to place odds so that Beverly can then put our bets next time she's over there?
Yes, I think that she should be reinstated. I totally do. I support her desire 100%. And I think that she should. And I think they should let her back in. Open the door.
To help the Democrats? To help the Democrats.
Of course.
Well, as a matter of fact, after that decision, after that opinion, Karamo was filed, all of a sudden the Republican donors nationally, where the Dems are committing 17 million, 10 million to the state, Republicans backed it down to less than $1 million during that opinion, because if he thought this was going to win, they're not investing any more money in Michigan.
Oh my goodness.
Well, wait, time out.
Yeah, please, go ahead. Yeah.
Ed, I'm glad you mentioned that again, because that was one of the things you said in our first discussion about Biden, the power of the moneyed people in both parties. Tell us a little more about that. You think that's where basically the power that's where it lies?
Oh, it does, because you got to remember, they're going to have to fund these campaigns. Okay. I've been around Ron Weiser, despite his partisanship, he was a friend of mine. He actually helped me I was on projects. He actually was nonpartisan, but I see what is happening behind the scenes. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've seen this happening over the first 52 years. I've seen how power and money move things. I've seen when Bob Carr lost the U.S. Senate race because of money people outstate, moved the money out of the state so everybody else looked good outstate. I've seen this time after time after time.
Look what happened to Andy Levin.
Yes. Well, that was his own doing, though. That was his own doing. Because that's a story I know behind the scenes more than you think. But the point being, Andy did that to himself.
Well, my point was simple. He disagreed with somebody on policy.
Yes.
I think it was a legitimate dispute, and money came in and flowed in against him.
It happened in New York with Bowman.
Yes.
It just happened. Yep.
So Allan, do you think that Bowman's loss in the primary was really that much of a swing? Because he defeated a 16-term congressman of Elliot Engel. I mean, was Bowman more of an anomaly, and that district would just simply go back to being more in line with his predecessor's political orientation?
I mean, I think it was, you know, I think people were willing to take a shot with him. I mean, he was a decent guy, but I think, you know, in a district that has a lot of Jewish people, and you start, you know, October 7th comes and you don't condemn it, and then you somewhat condone it. I think AIPAC, look, when AIPAC, if there's a weak spot, look, we saw with the Andy Levin race, Andy got killed in the primary with Haley Stevens, and Haley Stevens is a moderate. Her views on Israel were just very moderate. Andy's were, you know, I don't criticize Andy for having criticism of what he said, but AIPAC saw that as an offense, and AIPAC, if they see a weak spot, I think Bowman, there was a weak spot there, and AIPAC just opened the spigot and just poured the money in.
It didn't help. Pulling that fire alarm didn't help him either, from what I read in the New York Times.
Yes.
Right.
No.
Yeah, I think he was a little bit of a loose cannon, but you know, I think he meant
didn't
well.
get anybody to go up against Rashida. They tried their hardest.
Yeah, Rashida is just, I mean, no, she's going in unopposed in a district. I mean, I think if Rashida had stayed in the 13th district, she would not get reelected. But I think in the 12th district, she's in a very safe spot. Nobody wanted to take her on. And AIPAC was like screaming, like, we've got money. Anybody want to come in?
Anybody want $20 million?
Yes.
Well, I can tell you this. I was involved with AIPAC on finding a candidate to take on Rashida. There were two candidates, but one candidate got the heart attack, and he had over $100 million to spend. But I'm telling you the fact, they're ready to take on Rashida. But the question is, it's because it's such a safe Democratic seat. They're not going to spend the money unless somebody on the Democratic side comes up with some money first. You got to remember, halfway AIPAC's money, when they spend money, what seems like they're a Democratic, there's a lot of Republican AIPAC money that comes into these races. I've had conversations. Tons. And I tell people the fact, when I look at AIPAC, I said, I'll go to Republicans version first. How do you think Duggan gets his money? Is from the Republican side of AIPAC, not the Democratic side of AIPAC.
Ed, you couldn't be more correct. As far as I'm concerned, AIPAC, whatever AIPAC wants, I don't want. And I've been like that for many, many years. And I would bet you money at my synagogue, I'll bet you money that of the people who are AIPAC supporters, way more than 50% are Republicans. Absolutely.
Well, the conversation I've had over the last 2 years to find a replacement to take on Rashida, it's always the Republican money that comes up.
Absolutely.
Well, there's more money to be had in Detroit, it seems, and there's more money that is being hidden in Detroit, it seems. Ex-Detroit Riverfront Conservancy CFO William Smith apparently was trying to dump assets. A TRO has been granted in order to prevent that from happening, including a home in Atlanta valued at about $800,000, a condominium in Mexico worth about $385,000, and a 36-foot yacht. So, yes, Nancy.
All right. First of all, don't call it a yacht. It's just a boat. Okay. It's a 36. I don't. It was, and I think that the feds put, because I had this argument with my old colleague Violet, who's working on this story. She's like, "Well, the feds have it as a yacht in the filing, but it's a boat. Okay, it's just a boat." But it's a nice boat. It's an expensive boat. But
is that a gross point measurement thing?
Oh,
yes,
absolutely.
It is.
Right. Nancy's offended. She's offended that you call it a yacht.
Do you think
36 foot? That's a yacht?
Yes. I would have thought you wanted me to call it a 10-meter boat or go metric on it. But
no. It's just
we would call it a canoe.
Well, Nancy, we know how you're living.
It's like the people who call the Infinity and the Ovation yachts, and that's closer than that thing than whatever Smith was driving. But anyway, this guy had more houses than the Kardashians. I mean, he's got he's got a place in. It sounds like this is where an awful lot of the money went. I mean, he was living large, but he had to keep it a little bit on the DL because of his people knew what he was being paid. But I mean that he had a house in Atlanta, Mexico. Oh my God. Anyway, go ahead, Steve.
I don't know anything about the facts of the case other than whatever any of us have read. I know Gerald Evelyn's his lawyer, who's a great lawyer, but I can tell you this: it would be beyond my comprehension that this kind of stealing and these kinds of acquisitions would be something that was only known to him. And for those of you who aren't familiar with federal court, first thing the feds want every time, okay, we got you. What can you tell us about other folk?
Yeah.
So I don't know this. It's just based on my observations of 50 years of doing this. Do not be surprised if you start reading a newspaper article from Rob Snell, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the next day. It's a 5-year statute, where all of a sudden somebody else is going to be dragged into this, because I didn't know the number of things that Nancy just talked about. But the more there is, the more the chance is that somebody was watching him. Somebody was involved with it.
Well, they were watching him on his. They were watching him on his sloop, right, Nancy?
That's not a sloop either. Not a sloop.
First of all, I want to. Nancy said I was right about something earlier, and I want to support Nancy now. I looked it up. Apparently, to be a yacht, it's got to be over 40 feet in length.
Well, but there's no hard and fast.
There is no hard and fast rule, but it's generally accepted. Nancy, I'm trying to support you.
That's fine. I realize that, but I've spent enough time boating in the Detroit area to know that is not a goddamn yacht. Okay.
The second thing is, look, I couldn't agree more with what Steve said. I've done a couple civil embezzlement cases. I haven't done a criminal embezzlement cases, but I've done a number of civil embezzlement cases. There are all kinds of procedures that you're supposed to follow. For example, when you do audits, you're not supposed to have the person who's balancing the checking account being the same person who's doing other things. And to be able to steal $40 million over this period of time, it is impossible to believe that there either weren't other co-conspirators or somebody else was taking some of the money, or that other people knew. It's impossible for me to believe that.
Yep.
You know what I find? In DC, I covered an embezzlement involving two of the union members, the top union members of the school district, and they went into one of the women's closets. They had, clothing that had never been worn before, still had the tags on. They had boxes, like big screen TVs, still in the boxes. I find that people, once they start stealing and embezzling, they can't stop. They don't need the money. I mean, does a guy really need $40 million? I mean, I think it's just like, wow, this is amazing. I've been doing this for 12 years and haven't gotten caught yet. Let's just keep doing it.
I don't have to stay in a hotel in Atlanta anymore.
Right. It's not like mom's got a surgery.
And the other thing, the FBI, some FBI people I know around town said is that they're looking in heavily about how much money was passed through crypto.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they're looking at right now, is how much went through crypto. Because I just did I just worked on a project on how easy it is to invest in crypto, and I played around a little bit. It's pretty easy.
It's very easy.
No, but I think Allan is absolutely correct. When you look at everything you've just been reading in the paper, 12-year period, started off, whatever he started off, and then, discovered, hey, I'm the sole person with the key to the chambers. And then it just kept going. We're going to find out everything in detail on my favorite show, American Greed. It's coming. It's coming.
Love that show.
It's coming. It's coming.
They got Kwame's in that show.
Right.
Well,
teams never work. Just for all of you know. So Nancy, there's an unsubstantiated fact that
the boat has a 4.5 foot long chain of tin cans trailing it, which I think then will officially make it a yacht.
So there.
Or a wedding yacht.
Saeed, can we do two quick commercials and then we'll get right back?
Fellas, I'm new in town, and I've been here a couple of times. I absolutely love your place, man. But I've got to ask you, if you can, I've heard that you're going to be shutting this place down.
I'm not proud of it, brother, but we're behind our property taxes. And the county is all over us, man. I'm even afraid to even give them a call.
Well, we can't let it go, brother. I mean, we can't give up. There's got to be a GoFundMe campaign that we can run, even past the plate. Is there a forgiveness program or something that's out there?
Well, unfortunately, that's only for the big guys.
No, actually, Wayne County has payment plans for everyone.
Are you for real?
Yes, it's a well-designed program. We want to help you save your business.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. If you have delinquent taxes on your home or business, contact our office, 313-224-5990, or visit our website, treasurer.waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Got it.
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
So, Allan, mindful of our time constraints on the show, let's go to the final segment.
All righty, let me get to,
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right, it is that time. So, Ed, why don't you start us off? Who's your schmuck?
My schmuck is the one we really didn't talk about today. Is Mike Johnson filing a motion in U.S. House to the Supreme Court to overturn Trump's and a lot of the Trump's friends' cases.
And where did he file that?
They passed the opinion in the House to pass on to the Supreme Court to overturn these cases. So that's what's going on.
Huh. Schmucktastic.
What a lackey, Beverly.
Okay, of course my schmuck is going to be the former president, because as he looked over and noticed that my president was having a little issue with the NyQuil, he failed to seize the moment. He failed to seize the moment to really, tell some truth, look in the camera and say, hey, I know, I feel on women, criminal, all these integrity things, all of this, January 6th, and then come out and just say, hey, but that's in my past. And, I'm redeemed. And this is what I plan to do for you going forward. So he's my schmuck because he fumbled his ball, I think, also last night.
Washed in the blood of the lamb.
Even though I was at the casino,
you did the right thing.
Nancy, is that a religious reference from a Trump Bible? The $60 investment.
We're all going to hell. You guys realize this, don't you?
I'm not that Calvinist.
I'm already there.
Okay.
Truly, I'm already in hell.
Okay, Joel. With that as the segue, who's your schmuck?
I got a good one. The Oklahoma State superintendent who's requiring Bible study essentially in schools.
Yeah.
The crazy establishment clause, it's had its day. It's time to go. And determining the rationale being that the Bible is the fundamental basis for the United States and the Constitution, and that it's a historical document that everybody's got to read, to the exclusion of the Quran, the Torah, any other script of any other religion. It is indoctrination by the state into a religion, which is a clear violation of the Establishment Clause. But in Oklahoma, that doesn't really matter. So he is my schmuck of the week, and he is well deserving.
If only we could take it to the Supreme Court, that would surely overturn that.
They may. They've been pretty clear, the Supreme Court, in their opinions, that they won't. I mean, they have been, in their recent opinions, have been very clear that that they won't allow religion in the at least in schools. So we'll see if that continues.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the very idea that, and Louisiana is no better, demanding that the Ten Commandments be posted. I'm not sure that they would really be receptive if they were posted in Hebrew, given that it's Louisiana. But this kind of trend
what
toward
is adultery? What does adultery
It's
mean?
becoming an adult. You're a kid, then you're an adult. You're an adult.
No, Timmy.
I thought you meant being an adult 3 times. Adult 3? Oh, never mind.
Well, I mean, this kind of semantic gymnastics of saying that the Bible is historically significant to the development of American law is when Bill O'Reilly used to go on and justify that Christmas should be a valid federal holiday because we were only commemorating Jesus as a philosopher. So let's when May Day becomes a holiday because Marx is being similarly celebrated as a philosopher, then we'll see.
My sister used to teach in Grosse Pointe Park in the elementary school, and during Christmas time, my sister being Jewish, there was one student who was Jewish, so they had all these Christmas decorations in the classroom, and so she put up a little menorah, a paper menorah in honor of the Jewish student, and the principal came in and said, "Oh no, we can't have religious things here." And my sister goes, "Hello, like Christmas celebration of Christ?" And she went, "Oh."
That sounds like something that would happen in Grosse Pointe.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in Katy, Texas, I think it was in 6th grade, and I was one of 2 non-Gentiles in the class. The other was Elise Moyed, on whom I had a huge crush. And the language arts teacher said, "Well, we're going to be making angels for I was going to say hood ornaments, but I meant for Christmas tree ornaments. And you two don't have to do this. You can sit out." And I looked at Elise, and Elise looked at the teacher, and she says, "No, I'm fine with it." I said, "Yeah, I'm fine with it." She says, "Oh, well, that means that since you're the only 2 who haven't gotten paired up, I'm going to pair the 2 of you."
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's when I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, because he made it happen.
What a moment.
Hallelujah.
Become an idol.
Bill.
That's great.
I think I'm going to, I've got a couple, but I think I'll make mine the Heritage Foundation. And I won't go into great detail, but Project 2025 is, in my opinion, the most dangerous thing I've read about in recent months. And the Heritage Foundation is behind it. Remember, these are the folks who came up with the plan that became the ACA. Obama adopted it, and not one Republican ever voted for it, despite the fact that it came out of a Heritage Foundation publication. But this Project 2025, I think, would spell the end of democracy. And,
Yes.
And it is the blueprint for another Trump administration. So,
Well, that bill, and one of the items we didn't cover was the conservative group American Accountability Foundation, which is scanning social media for possible disloyal to Trump federal employees. So that's
all part of the Class F category of employees. They're going to take all these civil service employees and now make them political appointees and give them no protections, allow Trump to fire them and put in his brown shirts. I mean, his loyalists.
Unbelievable.
Steve.
My schmuck of the night, I didn't hear the first one, so hopefully you guys haven't said this. My schmuck of the week is Jill Biden. As we said at the beginning of the show, maybe Ed's right. I hope he's right. I hope the moneyed people will speak. But I know for sure if his wife sat him down and said, "Look, blah, 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 blah," they could make a big difference. And I think she's doing exactly the opposite. What I saw in the paper about last night after the fiasco, she was out there chanting 4 more years and all that crap. So if she, who knows better than anybody, those of us who are married certainly know enough about our spouse, if she's unwilling to do anything about this, then she's going to be my schmuck of the week, and she could be my schmuck of the decade if this other guy gets in.
All right, Nancy.
Okay, I may need a ruling from the Jewish members of the panel here, but I don't know where nice Jewish ladies.
You mean a fatwa?
I don't know where nice Jewish ladies go after they die, but wherever Ruth Bader Ginsburg is now, I hope she is looking down at the current the decisions that are coming out of the Supreme Court this week and saying, "Wow, yeah, I really made the most of that last 5 years on the court," and I'm really glad that I stuck around after
muscled it out. Yeah,
Barack Obama. Yeah, after Barack Obama tried to get me to leave early. So there we go. Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
So is that our first posthumous schmuck of the week?
That may be. This is I
like
to be a trailblazer, but this is, I think, she's also the model for Biden as he looked at at the facts on the ground right now. He's got to say, I want to, because somebody was saying, I think it may have been Bill when he was doing his Aaron Sorkin Love of Country speech. Somebody said he can look back and say, he saved us from Trump. He was a great one-term president. And it's like he can only say that if the Democrats win in the fall, because if they don't win in the fall, it will be, like I said, 1968 again. We'll have Richard Nixon, who are the worse than Richard Nixon, and the end of NATO and World War III and the rest of it. So there we go.
Nancy, it's a combo of 68, but also 74. I mean, remember, Republicans from the Hill went to the White House on August the 7th, and they told Nixon, you got to step aside.
Right.
And Nixon actually did listen, and he complied. We don't have that mechanism. We've got quite a bit different situation.
Very much so. Yeah.
Alan.
Excuse me. I am going to pick Lauren Boebert, who won her primary election. She changed districts, and she, in her victory speech, said, "I won the primary for the Christian morals." Who better to represent Christian morals than Lauren Boebert?
I wonder if anybody else is going to grasp that.
Yeah, right. The little irony there, like Donald Trump fighting for Christian morals.
No porn star. No porn star. No porn star. I love it.
Right.
No puppet.
She was no star. She was only a featured player in Loops. That's all, right?
But I mean, in fairness, Alan, I mean, her primary was there were like 3 or 4 other people who kind of diluted the vote, so the chance of it slipping through her fingers really wasn't that high.
Right.
Sure.
Oh, the strategies.
Well, at least she didn't get stiffed.
and so it goes. So my schmuck of the week is Democratic Congressman from Florida, Jared Moskowitz, who introduced an amendment to a funding bill for the State Department, something that passed 269 to 144, including 62 Democrats joining 207 Republicans, which prevents the State Department from using the death toll numbers that are presented by the Gaza Health Ministry. This, first of all, holding funding for the State Department hostage because of the sources of the data, which have not been challenged even by international organizations, seems to be really an overreach. The bill, of course, will go to the Senate, and it's unclear whether the Senate will go ahead and pass it, and who knows what will happen if it reaches the president's desk. But just this idea of given the images that are coming out of Gaza, to then challenge the numbers, which most international organizations would contend are probably an underestimate of even what the Gaza Health Ministry is providing, is schmuckery of its finest order. So there, Jared Moskowitz. Well, I don't know what we're going to do next week when there is no debate, and there may be some extra SCOTUS cases that we can go ahead and discuss as they come down. But fear not, we will always have something to talk about here at the week that was. Steve.
I just was looking at the Washington Post. I think that the Trump immunity decision is coming on Monday, so that'll probably give us something to talk about next
Oh
Friday.
yeah.
Okay,
I have faith. I have faith in this dirty world. So there we go.
And that despite the fact that you didn't get your primary education in Oklahoma. So all right. Well, thank you, Steve Fishman. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, Joel Sklar of the Grosse Pointe firm to be. Thank you, Beverly Watts. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. Thank you, Ed Sarpolus. And thank you, and with the last word as always, Allan Lengel.
And drive home safely.
All right.
Thank you, Layla. Have a